they came to me and they were like, Mom, we hate your startups.
Oh, wow. Who said
And it was
boys
like,
can't talk about their feelings? Good for
I was
them.
like, what?
Wow. That's young for them to
It's
say that.
young. They hate them. We don't like how they make you so distracted. We hate your
Hmm.
phone. We hate you're constantly on. We don't feel like we get quality time with you. They laid it out. And it was like a record scratch.
Hi, everyone. This is Christine Miles. Welcome to Shine a Light. It's great to be here today. I have my guest, Elizabeth Lawler.
Thank you so much for having me, Christine. I'm delighted to be here.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So I love to the way your bio reads. You've lived many lives. Yes, you have. PhD scientist. Okay, that's astonishing to me. Harvard educator, pardon me. Success tech founder, soon to be author. We'll talk about your book that's coming out, and of course, mother. So you hit a breaking point, launching your latest company, juggling a Netflix contract and your family life, and realized you didn't know how to ask for what you truly needed, which is how Hand It Over was born from that moment. I think things are really born in a moment, aren't they?
They are.
At least a tipping point. And to name the struggle that so many women face, and boy, do we face it, normalizing, asking for help, and offering real tools to fight burnout and find balance without guilt. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I think,
Thank you.
ladies, we need to hear this. So I can't wait to learn more. Well, first of all, what the Netflix, I hear Netflix, I think you were signed up for what? A documentary, a show, or
No,
you
no,
were solving their problems? What were you doing?
I would say my current profession is solving technical problems
Okay.
for various types of organizations. I've worked in the IT,
Mm.
cybersecurity, and software development space as a startup founder for the last 15 years. And then before that, I was at a startup that was in healthcare.
Hmm.
And then before that, as you mentioned, I was a research scientist.
Wow. How did you transition from that to startups in tech?
Well, it's interesting because I started my career as a programmer and I was using data sets and
Wait, as
IT
a research
systems.
scientist, you were a programmer?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right.
I was doing statistical analysis, and at the time I was like big data sets. So I was marrying up IT and
Mm.
data and healthcare research, and I was an expert in that for a long time. And so that was really how kind of it got going. And then I went to a startup that was acquired by CBS.
Mm.
I was their chief data officer and a cybersecurity officer there.
Wow.
And then I just started building tools to scratch my own itch,
You
like
like to fix things.
I do.
You like to build and fix things. First of all, I'd like to think we would have been friends like in college or high school, but I don't think you would have hung out with me.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know if I have enough of that brain to qualify, but that's very entrepreneurial in and of itself, isn't it? That you were building systems and tools to kind of marry. This probably wasn't something that was handed to you. You had to create this, right?
no, it was in fact when I went to my master's program I studied to be a doctor in college, but I didn't really like
Like a medical
the
doctor,
blood.
or
Yes,
oh,
the
okay,
medical doctor, but I realized I didn't like blood.
that's a
So,
problem. Yeah.
so I didn't want to do the hands-on part of it. So I decided to go into medical research instead. And I
Okay.
ended up studying epidemiology when it was a
What is
workforce.
epidemiology? Let's just.
Oh, the study of epidemics. So
Oh,
nobody
interesting.
really knew that term back in the 90s, but
Yeah.
now we all know what that
We sure
means.
do. We sure do. Yeah.
So
Where were
yeah,
you in 2020?
right. So I think that's probably a theme through my career is I end up showing up early to a party that isn't going to happen for another 10 years. But I've
That's
built
funny.
some prescient tools and done some kind of interesting leading edge things. And it always seems that about a decade later, it
It,
becomes like the hot thing.
well, it's interesting because before we started to air, we were talking about, I believe you said your stepdaughter who goes
Hmm.
to the University of Delaware, which I happen to live not that far from, about an hour. And I've done
Hmm.
work with the field hockey team at University of Delaware
Oh,
back in the day. But she wants to be in real estate. And one of the things you said is the real estate market's probably going to change in 10 years because of the tech. And I thought, well, you're the right person to ask, it sounds like. So you are in the 10-year curve. You can kind of foresee where things are going a little bit. But this is kind of what I hear as a theme is you see something and you go, this is a problem that needs solved, and nobody's quite figured out how to solve this.
Exactly. And that's sort of the exciting part about startups. It's the exciting part about science. It's the sort of running theme throughout my career, which is that I like to solve problems that haven't yet been tackled yet.
Yeah. But in
then
practical ways, that's what I hear. And I want to get into hand it over and what you're doing, but I'm getting the cart before the horse, if I may, because here's one of the things I believe: when you go back in the story instead of just forward, you really learn more about where all this started. And part of what I want for my audience and my listeners is to realize they have their own story as well, and we can learn about ourselves through stories of women and people like you that have really done some remarkable things. Not everybody's, figuring out how to manage tech and startups and getting deals with Netflix. That doesn't matter, but that purpose shows up pretty early in our lives. So what kind of kid were you?
Oh, I would say I was a kind of big reader, but very kind of interested in big questions, interested in science, interested in, all sorts of things. And I played field hockey too.
No way, Elizabeth. Tell me more. Where did you?
I was a left wing.
Oh, I would have passed the ball to you like there's nobody business. I would have crossed it. You could have come in, tipped it in, and scored, girl.
There you go.
Nobody listening understands the rules. You know that.
That's true.
What's that? Anybody who watches field hockey goes, "What's the whistle?" What just happened? Where did you play hockey? Did you play in high school?
I played in high school. Yeah, I didn't play in college. I went to BU, and they had a really good team.
Oh, Boston! You have to be a serious hockey player to play at Boston.
Yeah,
so. That's amazing. We have that connection.
Yeah,
I don't play anymore, but I wish I could. But a great sport, isn't it?
It is. It is. I liked field hockey. I liked swimming, and those were the two major sports that I played in high school. But
you also like to read. And so you said something important, though. You said, I liked big questions. Like, what does that mean to you as a 7, 8, 9-year-old? How does that show up?
Yeah, I just remember just kind of being fascinated with things like, how did the universe start, and like, what's the theory of time? And, I would just get really deep into all these little questions that I would have as a kid and start to explore them.
And who did you get that from? Like, what did your mom do? What did your dad do?
My dad was, he was an entrepreneur. He had his own small businesses making flavored popcorn. Do you remember when that was like a thing back in the 80s? Like, it was a big deal, and he'd go to the mall and they would do like blue popcorn, and it would taste like raspberries or something like this.
I sort of remember that. Yeah. They sort of still have that, don't they?
They still kind of, that sort of exists still, but it kind of got to fad level maybe in that time period. And then he had a business that made decorative containers that, like you get at Christmas time for cookies.
Wow.
That's sometimes personalized. So he had some businesses, some of which succeeded and some of which failed. And it was really interesting to kind of see that all firsthand. And then, he just was a big reader too, and had a lot of, kind of questions of the universe. And we would sit around and talk about it together.
He was a big thinker too.
Big thinker, big idea guy. Didn't always execute on it. All of his big ideas. He had many, many ideas. And I think perhaps that's where my bias towards execution came from, right? Like, if you watch your dad kind of like be a big idea guy, but not really take it to the next level, I, from a young age, kind of decided I was going to do that. So I wanted big ideas.
Make it happen.
I was going to make it happen. And so I got a scholarship to BU, actually.
Wow.
To Boston University to go there, an academic one.
Congratulations. That's not a small feat either.
Yeah. So I was just a really motivated student, all AP, really just gunning the whole time to be able to do what I wanted to do with an education behind me that I needed to get funded. Yeah.
There are a lot of really remarkable products that live on the shelves of places, right? Because they don't know how to sell them, they don't know how to market them. Where you can create something that doesn't mean you're going to be successful.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with the fact that you have to learn and fail and learn and fail and until you get it all right. And science definitely biases towards people who are able to do that, right? Because not every hypothesis you have is going to be successful.
Failure's hard though. It's really, as an entrepreneur, I often, when I mentor or I connect with people, I say, it's like the Titanic, there's the motivational posters and then there's the demotivational posters, and there's a they're hysterical. There's a demotivational poster that says the Titanic, let my life serve as a warning to others. And I think if I can help somebody get ahead of the money I've spent that I've had to learn that lesson from, because I needed to learn that lesson, and you just try to fail early and prevent you from having to learn that same lesson. I'm happy to pay that forward, but it can mitigate you wanting to take chances and take risks because you don't want to fail. And it's really hard to be successful if you don't take chances and take risks, isn't it?
It is. And, I think that the thing for me was that it's hard to let go of an idea. It's easier to modify an idea, I think, when people are kind of working along a thesis. And I don't know if that you've seen that in your practice or in your work, but to take a hard pivot and say, this is not working at all, I'm going to abandon it.
Yeah.
People get very emotional about that.
Well, they're like our
ideas
are like our babies, right?
Yeah,
exactly. And I always say, you don't go to the art museum and stand 6 inches from the Monet. You don't see the landscape. You only see the brushstrokes. And I think, I had a former business partner. This was years ago, and we had to work at a previous business on our own story. And he's like, well, we kind of help other people with that. I go, yeah, but we're too close to our own story to know how to tell it. Right. That's not what you're too wrapped up in it. Right. And that happens. So I'm curious, I'm jumping, but because that's fascinating about your dad. And so you're in the space of entrepreneurship, right? And then you're also in the space of creating tools so that things can get done. So you really did take a lot away from that childhood. But so these are kind of very technical things though. And now you're in this, like, I'm going to just call it touchy-feely. And I don't mean that as a negative because I'm in a touchy-feely business but touchy-feely might be, but it's to deliver really hard results because you need that. So how did you get into, I know you had this pivot moment. Tell us about that, into this hand it over.
So I'll start with the pivot moment because I think it was what was instructive for me to open my eyes and see yet another problem space that needed help. And I guess that scientific mind just sort of
you're kind of analyzing, right?
Every
life is an experiment, so you're kind of reading the feedback of the experiment, right?
Definitely. So I've been through 3 venture-backed startups, been parts of teams and also on my own raised tens of millions of dollars of venture capital. I was very highly focused on my job and on my work and on building these businesses and delivering success, and have had successful outcomes. I've sold companies to 2 of the companies I've worked on. The first 2, they're not the one I'm running now, but the first 2 I sold to publicly traded companies. The first one sold to CBS. The other one sold to CyberArk, who just sold to another company for $22 billion. I mean, and the platforms that I've built have become critical to those companies. And so it was a very focused, even during my doctoral work and postdoc work, very focused on the career, very focused on balancing, on getting ahead and achieving. And my boys. By
the way, let me just hit pause because I think this is really important. You said that, very kind of humbly, but that's quite an accomplishment. And I hate to say this, it's not that there's no women that do this, because there are, but I've heard this story many more times out of a man's mouth than a woman's mouth. And congratulations to the men who do it, because it's not easy for them either. But just to play kind of, homage to you in terms of, as a woman in a tech world too, this is a male dominated profession as well. And so just to be, and you're talking probably not yesterday, you're probably talking 10 years maybe ago or more. So this is a big deal. I say this for women and men, because listen up to what you have to say. You know how to get things done.
Definitely. And there, you're right about that. Only 2% of venture dollars go to women now.
Yeah.
And back then, if you were a woman in cybersecurity and IT. I mean, you were the only woman in the room.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
many rooms. So it was kind of like that throughout my career, actually.
Why
In the
is
fields
that
that I
only
worked in.
2% go to women? Just to digress for a moment.
There's lots of studies that have come out of HPS and other places that talk about structural interview bias, where people ask more kind of challenging questions, less promoting questions of women when they're pitching venture capitalists.
Wow.
And it's just there, there's a lot of reasons I think that it happens. People tend to fund people who seem like them.
Yeah, we're all guilty of that, aren't we? We're all guilty of that. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, let's go back to field hockey. I loved hanging out with field hockey players,
Right,
So,
exactly. So
yeah.
I think there's an institutional bias in that, but I think there are more people who are alert and awake to that now,
Yeah.
that there's more opportunity for women or women-focused funds.
Well, thanks to women like you too, who are you're now giving back as well to.
Indeed, I'm an angel investor in women exclusively in IT and high tech businesses, because I know how challenging those first dollars can be. So I started mentoring women throughout this process, and a lot of the mentoring I was doing was about that topic. It was like, how do you get venture dollars?
Sure.
How do you build your business? How do you think about de-risking your tech platform? But the thing I was never paying attention to was, how are you taking care of yourself? How are you balancing your life?
For yourself.
Are you doing, what questions are you asking of yourself along this journey? And so it took a wake-up call for my two boys, ages, I think they were 12 and 14 at the time, maybe a little younger. They came to me and they were like, Mom, we hate your startups.
Oh, wow. Who said boys can't talk about their feelings? Good for them.
I was like, what?
Wow. That's young for them to say that.
They hate them. We don't like how they make you so distracted. We hate your phone. We hate you're constantly on. We don't feel like we get quality time with you. They laid it out. And it was like a record scratch.
Well, how did it feel when you heard that? Like, how did it feel to you?
I was just kind of like, oh, what am I missing? What am I missing here? And when I think back and replay all of that, I was not listening carefully to them. I was not listening carefully to myself. I wasn't listening carefully inside of my relationship with my husband. And I needed to take a look and kind of pause things and say, how am I going to address this? And what I realized was I was so dialed into those hyper-focused outcomes that were measurable.
Sure.
I wasn't listening to my inner voice or their little voices and not being there. And so
it's real, isn't it? Day to day, we want to have it all, and right. And it's really hard to balance the emotional and financial needs of the family all the time, isn't it? And still stay afloat. It's a real struggle.
It's huge. And it feels like a lot of responsibility. And so you may be showing up responsibly, but you're not showing up authentically or personally or in an engaged way.
Yeah.
So I was at the soccer field, but I'm texting,
sure.
And that I realized after talking to women I was coaching or mentoring that this was like an epidemic.
Yeah.
Everybody was having the same experience. They were either thinking, I'm not doing enough at work, or I'm not doing enough at home, or I'm not doing enough for myself.
Yeah.
And I realized, wow, this is like another structural problem. And how can I help or participate or contribute?
Yeah. Wow. Well, first of all, I give your boys a lot of credit for calling you out on that. That takes a lot of courage, I think, as a young person. And obviously you must have been doing something right, because you gave them the permission to do that and the space to do that. So I think maybe you were not doing as well as you'd like, but you were certainly doing a lot of things right in those moments, for sure. But I have to imagine that felt a little bit like a punch in the gut as a mother, right?
Definitely. It was very difficult. And what encompassed was a sort of reassessment, realignment, triage of how we were operating as a family. And that was a very valuable exercise, I think, for all of us.
Yeah.
And certainly a valuable exercise for me, because I used to have a joke in my household, which was like the order of operations was like firefighting at the company,
Mm.
dealing with the kids, dealing with the husband, dealing with the dog, then dealing with me.
Wow.
And so I was 80 pounds heavier.
Huh.
I wasn't exercising. I wasn't taking care of myself. My kids didn't feel taken care of. And so I decided to start to like triage and say, what do I have to do? What can I not do? And what can I hand over? And start to get more help where I needed it and spend more time where I needed to show up.
Yeah. Well, asking for help is a really hard thing for a lot of people. I think a lot of women, isn't it? Yeah.
A lot of women, and particularly in the personal realm. I think that a lot of women that I've talked to feel that their worth is measured by
what they
the
do,
services they provide
We're
to the
givers.
family.
Yeah. All I want is so I tell a story often in my keynotes and about my struggle to allow people to help me as a young person. I think, I saw it as a weakness. I saw it as a fundamental weakness, and there's a story behind that story. But now all I want is for people to do stuff for me. It's like, if you want to make me happy, just take that off my plate. And I'm delighted by that, but it's a work in progress. So so hand it over, love it. Love how you're describing that because it is a handoff, isn't it?
It is. And it's not about just delegating. It's about figuring out how can we all create better network effects, both sort of in your intimate relationships, which are inside your home, but also in your next circle out in your community, to structure our lives better so that we all don't feel like we're spinning plates or juggling balls all day long. One of the first things I started doing was reaching out and making better networks for things like soccer practice and, more carpooling, more friendships. That developed to more coffee meetings and more support networks.
Yeah.
And, those types of things, a lot of them were eroded during COVID. People kind of went inward.
Sure.
And I think folks are looking now to figure out how better to create more community and more structure around those communities. And again, things like tech and all this stuff can all help with it.
Sure, if we know how to do it.
Yeah, but it starts with recognizing first that it's not risky to ask for help. It may feel embarrassing. One of the things I think about was my son joined the golf team, and I don't know any golf parent, right? And I had to like reach out and be embarrassed,
kind of vulnerable,
get over it, and vulnerable to say, "Hey, I'm Owen's mom." And, yeah, exactly. And hey, does anybody want to carpool? These meets are really far away.
That they are. You have to travel to go to as a golfer. You have to travel to golf courses. Yes.
And
they're
not
long.
at the school.
They're long. They're not like I guess swim meets were kind of long, weren't they?
But not as long as golf.
No, golf 18 holes takes a while, even if you play fast. So that's funny. Well, but so you're not talking about financing outsourcing. You're talking about how to create networks within your own communities and creating communities so that you can hand it over and work as a community in some ways. Okay.
Indeed, because think about the women of my generation and probably yours were given kind of mixed signals around this, which was like lean in, go for it.
Yeah.
Don't show weakness. You can compete with the guys. And at the same time, there are these other things that maybe we're responsible for that were not being recognized. I mean, most care for parents, for example, falls on women. Most, child care responsibilities, home responsibilities disproportionately fall on women, according to statistics. And then you see, research from McKinsey that talks about how women are not succeeding in the corporate world at the same rate that men are promoted. And you say, okay, well, what's dragging down on the system? So it's both a structural problem in that women have few supports or no supports on childcare, et cetera.
Yeah.
And then you say the other issue is how do we think about that as a community to speed up the process of creating supports for people so they can balance the life in the way they want to,
right?
Not in a way that is unsustainable.
Yeah. Well, there's just, because it's an older system, we haven't caught up. So there's still if to use a golf pun, and I think I'm funny. If nobody else does, that's okay. That's handicapped, right?
It is, yes. And I'm a golfer now too, because I had to learn to golf to keep up
That's
with
funny.
these boys.
That's funny. Good for you. I like you. But I decided we would have been friends.
I think we would be friends. And also, I think field hockey contributes positively to golf skills.
Now, see, that is not my experience at all.
Oh, really?
I don't think the swing has anything to do with the other. I think being able to hit a ball has something to do with it. But golf is an anomaly in and of itself because the field hockey swing is very different than the golf swing.
That is true. You have to learn to follow through above the shoulder,
Right,
which you
not
cannot
allowed,
do.
no, and you have
field
to take
hockey.
you take more back in a different way. That's a side story. But I applaud you that you go into the golfing, even though you're not a golfer, to do that with your kids. So
Thank you.
tell us more about the specifics about Hand It Over. Like tell me, I'm a woman, I am a woman, so that's not an if.
Yeah.
But if I were a woman, a mother, I'm balancing the corporate life with 2 kids and 3 kids at home. My husband's working too. Tell us how this works, how you can help.
Yes. So a lot of people invest a lot in networking. I think networking is one thing we just touched on. And I think that's such an interesting and transferable skill that people don't always take into their personal life the same way they take it into their professional life. So networking is something that maybe people do naturally inside of the corporate world. Finding people who are peers or people to mentor you or people to support you in certain ways professionally. In the personal realm, people don't look for help as much because of worries about being perceived as burdensome or asking for favors and having to return favors. But the thing is that everyone's kind of struggling with the same work-life balance.
Yeah.
And so if you start to take some of those principles about like, how do I effectively manage or delegate or support or empower people, and you apply some of those same strategies and skills to creating community and shared aligned values and goals to, it could be everything to, I don't want to go to every single hockey practice, therefore I'm going to create a network of parents and we're all going to do this together and we're going to benefit and we're going to feel like we're going to have more control. If you can set those situations up as somebody who can be maybe a instigator, then you feel not only the support in terms of time and reclaiming your time, but you also get to feel the benefit of having
more support.
Kind of,
it takes
more
care
people
of
to engage with.
It takes care. You also get fed because you're doing self-care when you have your own network and friends, right? And you're also taking care. So I always say social services would be called that, the amount of freedom that I had as a young person, and certainly when I look at my peers, I mean, I was one of the best, if not the best athlete on the field. Sometimes my parents were at maybe 2 games a season. They were not at every game. So I do think we also want to shine a light on the fact that maybe I have some issues based on that, but at the same time, we don't need to be at every practice, do we?
We don't. And it's very interesting that you say that, because I ran a group with women founders recently, and one of them was talking about how she would really like to do something, but she doesn't want to invite people over because her house is a mess. And another woman said, I have an open house every Saturday, no matter what my kitchen looks like. Because you just have to drop the Instagram perfection.
Yeah.
Your kitchen doesn't have to be clean. Your bathroom does not have to be perfect to have people over in your home.
Good. Yes, it's changing the standards a little bit, right?
Changing the standards.
Martha Stewart, I love her, but she hurt us a little bit, didn't she?
Yes, her and Ina Garden.
Yeah. You tell me if this is a good example of a tip. I have a friend who just became a grandmother. Her son had his first child just today, so she's fresh on my mind. But I remember her, and she had 3 kids. She had a big job at a pharma company doing cancer research. And one of the things she told me is she told the kids, I'll do your wash, but if it's inside out washed, I'm not going to right side it. Like, it's going to get folded inside out. Think about the time that saves you if you're the family laundry person. But that's the kind of stuff that I don't know that we're programmed to say to ourselves. It's okay if I give it back to them in this state, if that's the state they gave it to me in.
Oh, absolutely. And I think your mention of children and their responsibility is so important, because, if you grew up in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, you were much more independent and
Much more.
expected to do a lot more.
Yes.
Because you didn't have something distracting you 24 hours a day called a phone.
Yeah.
And I think there was a lot more individual responsibility. My parents didn't really help me with my homework per se. I did it on my own. I was responsible for it. So one of the first things I did with my kids was to make the deal that in order to get my time back, they were going to have to step up.
Okay.
And so some of the things that they started to do were things like ordering the groceries. So they would go into Instacart or to pick it up at Stop and Shop and pick the things we needed. They know if we need milk. They know if we need bread or butter or lunch meat. Now,
Oreos.
Or Oreos. But naturally, they'd throw something in there like gummy bears. You know, as long as it wasn't all gummy bears, it's fine. And, you know, I like to think about how, I'm getting a little bit more ramen than I would normally get, but I also will sometimes get a chocolate bar that they say we picked out for you.
Oh.
You know, it's like really sweet, and it gives them some ownership and some responsibility that they wouldn't otherwise have. Same thing with the laundry. You know, I have a little system for them of handing it over. And I actually have a little card that if somebody wants, they can DM me and I'll send it to them. But it's about how you assign tasks to them, what you expect from them. I put a little picture of what done looks like on it. It's a little card. Print it out, give it to them and say, hey, this is the dishes.
Wow. Yeah.
And when we're done, we're all going to watch a movie as a family, or you can have TED time, or, you know, and that's how I reclaim my time in the home.
Yeah.
More participation for my kids is a component of it. But it's something that we kind of lost somewhere along the way and needs to come back.
Well, I think we need to find a more balanced approach to, I mean, like I said, my mother would have said I raised myself. So I was, you know, there's an aspect when a little bit more high touch would have been welcomed. And I don't know if I'd want that if I had to trade it off to have all that's done for me in so many of the households that are happening. Not all households, because there's a lot of kids in underprivileged situations that are not living the dream here. But because I worked in that life, I started my career going to people's houses and I saw that. So I don't want to, this can be a first world problem, but for sure, I think that we forget that we're raising them to be adults, not just to be catered to.
Totally. And that's why it's really important to me for the handed over framework. We don't think about it as hiring help.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because not everybody can hire help. And as you mentioned, you know, a lot of people are working from paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
So that's where community really matters.
Yeah.
You know, that's how we can help support those moms, sometimes single moms who have children, who are responsible for taking care of those kids and the financial stability of their family. You know, definitely asking for help and getting help from your community should be something that can be expected. Yes, that the community will be there for you. And so I'm hoping to figure out how to start to have these conversations so people can feel more of that whole.
Well, and as you said, I think the other thing that happened with COVID, as we well know, is not everybody's in an office, which was also a clear break line. So again, part of my bias is I think that the hybrid model is really the best model just for our psychological well-being. I know it's more convenient to be at home. I know it has perks, and there's a lot of things that make it easier in terms of being a parent, or, you know, you can run to the laundry room and do things, but the trade-off is you get more insular into your home, and then you lose more of those connections. I mean, what was the joke during COVID? It was like the introverts said, I've been training for this my whole life. Yeah. And now, as an extrovert, and I'm very extroverted, I don't find myself as engaged in social as I used to be, because you know, that practice of going, you know, just having less. So I go, oh, now I tire out more easily when I go out. But we have to build that muscle. We have to build that, so that we don't lose that community, because we can get too isolated, especially if we're working virtually.
And getting back to the McKinsey study, which I'd be happy to share the link to, which I believe is public if your audience is interested in it. Women talk about how they don't feel as supported in the workplace as well. And I think that distance and the, ability to ask for help, mentorship, support,
Yeah.
sponsorship
Yeah.
has been impacted by this post-COVID world in a ways we have not yet totally appreciated. And definitely it's disproportionately impacting women who are leaving the workforce at higher rates, who are having lower promotion rates, et cetera, which is really
concerning.
Concerning. At this rate, we won't reach pay equality until after 2050 if we're lucky.
Wow. I was just talking with a former colleague that was the head of the LeBeau College of Business at Drexel, which is in my backyard, and he's working with a nonprofit for entrepreneurs in Africa and wanted me to do some work and help with them. And it's interesting to hear if I didn't put the word, women in the United States in front of it, it really doesn't sound all that different than the hierarchy in some ways that can happen in less privileged countries. So we're making progress, but we have a lot of catching up to do. This isn't men versus women, it's men and women, right?
It is. It's men and women. And really, I think there's been a lot of politicization of things that are meant to promote people into more, egalitarian systems versus penalize any groups for being privileged. But, I think that we're struggling to try and create a balanced system.
Yeah, like a lot of things, and even a balanced systems in our home, because sometimes, men do more than women. Sometimes women do more than men. So we have to work with our partner as well. I'm sure that's part of your hand it over, not just work with your kids, but work with your partner, right?
Indeed. And there are books by Eve Rodsky, which was, I'm trying to think of the name of the book now, which is Fair Play. And it talks about how to negotiate better with your partner to create a more equal system. But I feel that it didn't go far enough in the sense that it's really, in that case, you're sort of laser focused on one person to help you for every single problem you might face.
Yeah.
And that creates its own kind of new tension.
Sure.
So just as somebody who's worked professionally with her partner, so we had startups together and co-parented together, being laser focused on one person is also not sustainable. So that's why I feel like there's this next level that we can get to, which may be more indicative of other community models that we had sort of earlier in our society's history. When you think about people being, very focused on churches and having like more support networks through churches, or very focused on neighborhoods that weren't very far apart, where everybody was like walkable, didn't have to drive, or the kids were going out
to play, which isn't as natural as it is today. So it's not as common for my mother used to have to walk up to the neighbors to find me, now you can send a text to your kid, and that interaction doesn't necessarily have to happen on the same level, right?
Yeah. So I met with a woman who talked about how she moved out of a very suburban area back into a slightly more urban area in order to have more tight relationships with other parents who had similarly aged kids, where they could do what you're describing and share some of the burden and the load. So I think people have to kind of sit back and assess, like, how much support do I need versus how much support do I get? Is my lifestyle, the way that I've got it set up, like helping me with this?
Is it working?
Is it working? And who could I possibly reach out to, or where could I find some people who are in a similar boat where we could kind of band together and figure out how to help one another? And I think that's really the opportunity for Hand It Over, which isn't to say like just get rid of and dump things.
No,
it's really about handing each other, giving each other a helping hand, and then figuring out how to balance all the load.
Well, it's good. And you're writing a book now, correct?
Yeah, yes, still in the research phase, but and I obviously would love to talk with anyone who would like to contribute stories. But I've gotten some really interesting interviews from folks who've done TED Talks and other things about building community. From women trying to rebuild community networks to support their professional and personal goals.
Well, they can also DM you, I would assume, if they're interested in participating and sharing their story. So, and is that going to come out in 2026, or what's the goal here?
Yes, the goal is 2026.
And it's going to be called?
Yeah, I hand it over.
Oh, well, there you go. Just checking. Did you hear a dog bark?
Yes, I'm so sorry. My
No,
puppy's barking in the
that's right.
background.
As if you're watching this, I asked Elizabeth before we started, is it okay if my cat's here? Because she may steal the show who's behind me. And you said you had 2 dogs at your feet. So we're all
Yes.
part of the family here. That's
Oh,
very,
thank you.
so, well, congratulations on that project
Thank you.
that you're turning this into a book that can really help people in a whole and reach more people
Reach more
to,
people and hopefully provide people with some actionable playbooks in order to be able to have these conversations, make some new networks, and
yeah,
get more support, so they can
wonderful.
get their own time back and time back for the things they love to do.
It's creative problem solving, and I think what I hear, and you correct me if I don't get you, is that some of this is really about changing the way we define what success looks like in our homes. And what really makes a successful lifestyle isn't about perfection. Well, it's a lot about how we connect and make sure we're here for one another, but it requires some real planning to do that, and some smart
It
planning,
does.
just like we do have to do in our corporate lives.
Indeed, and there's a lot of technology and things out there that we can also offload all of our problems to. And
Yeah.
so it's a combination of managing your own workload in the most efficient way possible and engaging others to help share the burden with you. And I think once people get to a blend that works for them, I think people will feel less overworked,
Yeah.
a little bit more satisfied with their lives, and hopefully feel a little bit more of that joy day to
Yeah.
day.
It's a good mission. It's a
Thank
really good
you.
mission. And here's what I believe is that it's the small changes that make the big difference. Is sometimes we just do 1 or 2 small things, and then the load really starts to feel different. So I appreciate that you're helping women not only be entrepreneurs and through your many ways you support them that way, but now in a very practical one-on-one way to give back to women and help them be successful and live less stressful lives is really remarkable. So it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for sharing. I think you gave some great suggestions already that we can get our arms around and start enacting just to make things a little bit better. So thanks for sharing your story as well.
Thanks so much for having me, Christine. I really appreciate the opportunity.
And where can they find you on social media, by the way?
I'm on TikTok and Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
And what's your handle?
Dr. Elizabeth Lawler is on Instagram and Facebook, and Elizabeth Lawler on TikTok, and I'm Elizabeth Lawler on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you everyone listening. I look forward to seeing you next time on Shine a Light.